Hi book lovers, I'm Maria P. Freno, author of 3 books currently available on the Australian Book Lovers website. The Decision They Made is in the historical fiction section and is a family saga with a big secret that is never to be discovered. Xenia Station, A Billion Light Years, is a short science fiction story and is available, well, you guessed it, in the science fiction section. The Shop on the Prince's Highway is also a short story and is about how migrants have helped to make Australia the great country it is today. This one is available in the Aussie Tales section. Check out these books and many other Australian titles on the Australian Book Lovers website and make sure to buy more Aussie books.
Once upon a time. Welcome to Australian Book Lovers, your destination for imagination.
A big warm welcome to everybody and a huge thank you once again for joining us for the official Australian Book Lovers podcast. Our mission, as always, is to bring fabulous Australian and Indigenous literature spanning a whole range of genres to book lovers all around the globe, as well as fantastic resources and information for passionate authors looking to write their next bestseller. I am Darren Cousincoe, science fiction and horror author, passionate reader, and one of your hosts and co-founder of Australian Book Lovers, coming to you today from Corner Country.
And I'm Veronica Strachan, fantasy, memoir and picture book writer, reader and your other co-founder and host, coming to you today from Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung country.
And not only that, Veronica, we are joining our listeners today for episode number 13. Lucky for some and definitely lucky for us.
And what's commonly known as a baker's dozen, which is where the baker gives you an extra bun in the dozen just because either your friends or he likes you or he's got an extra. So there you go.
Oh, there you go. And isn't there a, when it comes to wine, isn't there a some sort of dozen that's 13 for wine as well?
Oh, is there? Maybe.
Cellar door dozen or something? I'm not too sure. I'm not too much of a wine.
Cellar door dozen.
I have no idea. Although it is good time to buy wine around our area in the beautiful McLaren region.
Oh, there you go. So I could tell you, in fact, that a baker's dozen, the tale behind it is that it's a medieval law that specified the weight of bread loaves, that any baker who supplied less to a customer was in punishment. So they'd often put the 13th loaf in just to make sure. There you go. But yeah, we always thought it was because the baker was, very kind.
Yeah, or a capitalist looking to, get the biggest market share. But if that was the case, we'd already have a Baker's 72 by now, wouldn't we?
Well, true.
In theory.
True. Anyway, we're getting very sidetracked.
Yes, episode 13, and look, another jam-packed episode ahead. We've got amazing interview. We've got some, another reading coming. Obviously, some great conversation to be had surrounding some of the themes of today's interview. Yep. So it's just a wonderful opportunity to jump back into the joys of doing the podcast, talking with so many great authors and having these, great discussions about literature, about themes, and about all the cool things that involve books and reading. So perhaps now is a good time to jump straight to the news.
Absolutely. And a little bit of a different news today because our author that we're speaking to, Tanya Simons, or Tia Simons as she writes under, has her book published with a small press, one of the Australian small press called Ouroboros Press from Queensland. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that's okay. So one of the things that I'd like to share with people is that there are a whole stack of great small press organisations in Australia. So if you go to the smallpressnetwork.com.au, you can actually look up their publisher directory, and what you can do is type in the kind of thing that you want. So, we'll be talking about climate fiction, for example, and you can type in climate and you can see which organisations, that might be a bit too specific, but you can see which organisations do speculative fiction, for example, or children's work, or, creative non-fiction. And you can have a look and get a little bit of a sense of what these publishers look for, as well as going, the other way. So who could I get to publish my book of children's poetry, for example? And you could type in poetry, you could pick all the ones that do that, and then you can go to their website and see. So it's a bit of a filter, I guess, to see what might be the most appropriate, either traditional or hybrid hybrid publishing that you might like to do. So smallpressnetwork.com.au.
Absolutely, and it would be interesting. I'm going to have a look at myself, but it would be interesting to see just how many small press options and there are out there here in Australia. I've got no doubt that it must be growing by now. The number must be on an incline.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a count, but there's a very long list, and I had heard of some of them. Some of them do very well. They support their authors particularly well. The Small Press Network also has a book of the year, and the submissions are open now. So if you are published with one of these small press, by all means, jump on board or contact your small press publisher and get yourself in. So the entry's got to be received by close of business Monday 24th this year, 2021. So there you go. That's another little bit of a news there. The other thing that it's worth talking about in terms of, I guess, book processing is the Institute of Professional Editors. So they've also got a directory where you can do a searchable list of freelance editors who are professional members of the Institute of Professional Editors. So in terms of Australian book lovers, not only are we trying to support our authors, but we're also trying to give you some resources as an author that you might like to have a look at, or you might see as absolutely essential, including editors. So jump along to the IPED, which is the Institute of Professional Editors, and you can have a bit of a look there, and you can find an editor, search their directory as well, and they can tell you all about what's going on. In a traditional contract, most likely they're going to provide the editors for you. Some of the small presses do that as well, but particularly if you're self-publishing, editing is essential. Got to get in there.
Yeah, and it raises an interesting point too, because there has been, over probably the last 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, but, it's such a fundamental shift in, I guess, the doorways for authors to access the publishing world and more effectively or more true to the point to reach readers. And, whereas before, when I was growing up, the thought of getting published, that was pretty much the only option at that time, was to get a manuscript, send it out, start wallpapering your writing area with the rejection slips and hope that there's a crack of light through the storm and a publisher does just, want to take on your work. That was the way to get out there, essentially. Alternatively, of course, there was, which I was a big fan of and a part of, Street Press magazine for short stories and alternative newsletters, etc. They were a fantastic way to get your small doses of writing out. But now there is just this huge menu of opportunities when it comes to getting your work out there. So resources, just like you mentioned there, Veronica, and it's to cater to anybody's desire, really. Somebody may want to work with a small publisher that retain some sort of control, but at the same time have that support and industry expertise. You might just want to look at, for example, professional editing, having a look at prices, and you may want to focus your self-promotion by doing the majority of things yourself, but paying for professional editing, for example. Or you may want to just look and see what all the different stages of the publishing process are, draw yourself a roadmap, and then there's so many resources out there where effectively you can educate yourself on each step and have a go yourself. So it's just absolutely a fantastic time.
Yeah, and the fact is that self-publishing is a lot more supported than it was. As you say, the door is open. So the Small Press Network, for example, which is a representative body for small and independent publishers in Australia, and I'm going to be honest, yes, it is located in Melbourne at the Wheeler Centre, but that doesn't mean that you can't, if you're anywhere in Australia, you can and be a part of it. So it's been around since 2006, since the Small Press Underground networking community, and it's sort of grown, so now it's got over 140 members in Australia and New Zealand. But as a self-publisher, you can also be a part of the Small Press Network. So there's an associate level open to self-publishers. That means you gain access to all of their resources. They help promote the work. They connect to other members and offer ways of engaging with the public. So full membership's kind of reserved for publishers functioning as a business, which makes a lot of sense, and they meet the the criteria that the SP and the Small Press Network have. So definitely worth having a look. And it's, again, as you say, one of the resources out there, which is fantastic. So there you go, Small Press Network, worth having a look.
Excellent.
Couple more things. One is that Love Oz YA are looking for 3 Love Oz YA champions to join their content team and help spread the love. Now, I say that because we will soon have our own little mascot for YA. I'm sorry, I'm stealing some of your news for the local, but
no, that's
you did
all
say
right.
last time, yeah.
Yes.
So it's a coming. But have a look at the Love Oz YA either on Twitter or, go along to loveozya.com.au and you'll see a great website which supports Australian YA literature. And they're looking for some volunteers to look at helping with their content for their team. So that's good. And I know they are really passionate. There's lots of great people out there doing work on Love Oz YA. And the final thing is another little star from our co-writer, Andrew Roff. So I found this little treasure. This was on the Books and Publishing, but also when I was looking up short stories, because I know, we've been talking about short stories for a little while. So Andrew Roff, who we spoke about a few episodes ago, who got an anthology for his list of short stories. In fact, one of his short stories won the 2020 Peter Carey Short Story Award. And it's just that thing again, which, I've been kind of a bit reluctant to jump in. I think I did actually submit a story to the Peter Carey Award a couple of years back because it was run by the Mirrabooka Council, which is down Geelong way, and, I have a little bit to do with things down there. But it's important to get your short stories to practice your craft. Some people, that's their whole thing. That's what they love to do is short stories, hence Andrew and his anthology, which has got picked up by a publisher. But it's interesting that short stories and awards are going to help you sell your work, get it in front of people, get it in front of judges. Being on a long list, being on a short list, all of those things are part of authors promoting their work. So, yeah, congratulations to Andrew. Yet again, another South Australian. So there you go.
Oh, I like the sound of that, yes.
Yeah, so I should say that Andrew is one of our co-authors on Christmas Australis, a frighteningly festive anthology of spine-jingling tales. I think we might have to blame you somewhere in there for that very long title, but it was a great
possibly,
story.
But if you're reaching for a stick, you won't be able to find me.
Yeah. No, it was very memorable. So there you go. And that kind of came up because the Peter Carey Short Story Award 2021, the long list is out. So you can, just Google the Peter Carey Short Story, and there's 13 long list of stories there. I won't read them out, but they are out and about. So have a bit of a look at the awards, people, if that's something that you want. And if you're a reader and you're looking for things to read, these are the kind of things you would look at. So, yes, I shall leave you with thinking about short stories and segue to you. Go, Darren. What's the local news?
Well, yes, I guess short stories is a bit of a theme for this episode, and it has been a little bit of a theme for the news. Not to mention, of course, the mascots, our new genre mascots, which by the time this podcast comes out, fingers crossed, they may even be making an appearance. But I guess with website and podcast news at the moment, we're working very hard to do a quick run, well, not a quick run, but a solid run of podcasts, because we've had so many fantastic authors give so much of their precious time and give us great insights into, all of their writing inspirations and, what drives them to move forward in the literary world. And, it's been so fantastic talking with them that we're working hard to get as many podcasts out as we can over the next week or two to make sure that, all of our listeners out there can enjoy all these fantastic interviews. So definitely you will see over the next week or two podcasts coming through on a quite regular basis as we move through all those wonderful interviews that we've had. Now, also discussing short stories, depending on when this comes out, it may be on the website or it may be a week or two away, but soon there will be a new submission form for authors. Now, this submission form will be an invitation for authors of any caliber to submit short stories of 3,000 words or less at this stage. Now, the beautiful thing, of course, about short stories is, as Veronica, as you mentioned, it's an avenue that a lot of authors enjoy. It's also a huge style of writing that readers enjoy, because for every 5 readers that are ready to invest their time in a full-length feature, which is what reading's all about, but there's also probably 100 readers out there more than happy to jump on board and spend 5-10 minutes reading a story, knowing that they'll go from beginning to end, and with the opportunity, chance, and possible little luck of discovering their next favorite author or their next favorite genre. So it's a beautiful and fantastic way to promote yourself as a writer. So if you've got short stories that you'd like to submit, fantastic. Once that form is up, by all means, we'd invite you to. If you're a writer out there who has been toying with the idea of writing short stories, absolutely, then maybe sit down and write. As far as genres, at this stage, there is, whatever story you want to tell is the only criteria that it is a story that you want to tell. So no barriers there. The form, there'll be further instructions with regards to the form and some of the things that are important when it comes to submissions. And we are also asking if you'd like to include a book cover or a cover essentially for your short story. And if not, we're looking at the process of maybe generating some for you. But very exciting, because it's going to be great for all those people out there listening to this podcast. They may be driving, they may be on a bus, they may be on a train, but everyone's got 5 or 10 minutes, sometimes during lunch or wherever they might be, where perhaps it's time for the earbuds to go down and maybe they just want to have a quick read. And that's what we are hoping here at Australian Book Lovers, to have a wealth of short story options to read on the fly, so to speak. And not only that, to as just another avenue to promote all of our fantastic Australian authors and hopefully bring new readers to new writers and again help celebrate our literary talent here in this fantastic country. So, but otherwise, still a few more things coming, but working behind the scenes. So again, I'm going to use that spring analogy in the sense of, there's going to be some fantastic and very entertaining news coming soon, very soonish. Lots of work going on behind the scenes, but more importantly, right now, we're doing a lot of work to bring you some, the best podcasts we can with some of the best entertainment we can. And that includes, the just awesome interviews with authors, and as is the interview we're going to be listening to today, Veronica, with yourself and Tanya Simons. Yes. Which was fascinating.
Yeah, look, it is absolutely fascinating. And what it did, it just makes you think about so many different things. So talking to these authors and understanding where they came from, and then you go, oh, what about this and what about that? So Tanya's books are addressing the question, if we gave young people the opportunity to start over, would they replicate the mistakes of the past? And, kind of typically, I won't sort of preface the interview too much because it's, Tanya explains it much more succinctly than me. But then I got into looking at climate change fiction. And as, many people will know, this has started to become a more popular theme. There are definitions, and you know how I love definitions, Darren.
Yes, I do indeed.
So I'm going to say to you, Anthropocene novels.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That's not a term I came on my very quick research. That's definitely not a term I came across.
All right. So Anthropocene, and I will say to everybody that I got this from the ostlit.edu.au/climate change website, as well as some other bits and pieces. But the glossary that they've got there just, made my little word nerd heart beat faster. So there's a climate change fiction glossary there. And I went there because I'd started to look at climate change, and Anthropocene came up. So Anthropocene is the current geological age characterised by human-induced climate change and mass extinction, according to scientists. So it was coined by atmospheric chemist Paul Crutzen and limnologist Eugene Sturmer in 2000. So it denotes, as I said, that kind of where the geological period where humans have the decisive influence in altering the state, processes and future of the Earth. And it's usually suggested to have begun around 1800 with the European Industrial Revolution. So you know how we have the Pliocene and all of those dinosaur kind of ages? Well, we're now in the Anthropocene. Did you know that?
No, I didn't. I do now, yeah. I didn't realise that. Oh, well, I guess it makes sense that the Industrial Revolution would sort of be a key marker for when, you know, a new age begins, or as far as a new impact upon the world around us by a species,
Yeah. So there you go. So you can look up anthropocentrism, which, you know, as you can imagine, is the, you know, basically the ideology that determines how human cultures make sense of the world. Couple I just want to add. Eco-criticism is one. So it's the field of literary ecological criticism. It started as a kind of academic field in the 1990s, and then it's, you know, what it describes is human works where human agency is not the sole significant interest. And it offers perspectives on that kind of interrelation of human and non-human. So there you go. There's ecofeminism, which is an intersectional ecological feminist approach. And it offers an overview in history where it frames issues in such a way that people can recognise common causes across boundaries of race, class, gender, sexuality, species, age, ability, nation, etc. So they're a little bit different. Environmentalism, a very broad concept referring to the way of thinking about the natural world, sometimes defined as a set of deeply rooted values and a mode of action. So it articulates the relationship to the land and its creatures, and to some extent guides the way we act towards it. Now, here's one that you and I might be interested in: environmental uncanny or ecological uncanny.
I think I'd need to request a little further elaboration there. I do like uncanny, but I'm trying to put the two together.
Yeah. So it's primarily associated with Amitav Ghosh's The Great Derangement. The environmental uncanny positions the Freudian notion of the uncanny in relation to human and non-human interactions in the Anthropocene. So in this kind of era. So we are now in an era that will be defined precisely by events that appear, by our current standards of normality, highly improbable. And included in that are flash floods, 100-year storms, persistent droughts, spells of unprecedented heat, sudden landslides, raging torrents, pouring down rain from breached glacial lakes, and, yes, freakish tornadoes. So there you go.
Yeah,
so if any of those are in your post-apocalyptic dystopian climate fiction, well, there's a word for it now. And the academics are stuttering it. Yeah. All right. Two more. Wow. Just give me two more.
Yeah, please.
One is solar punk. So
I like that.
Yeah. So sometimes positioned as the opposite of climate change fiction, where, you know, the latter is kind of conceived as inherently dystopian. Solar punk as a literary subgenre imagines a response to the Anthropocene that includes radical social change and an embracing of sustainable, renewable or organic technologies and processes. So, yeah, interesting that, you know, we kind of do something about it. Radical social change, wouldn't that be novel? The last one, the glossary, there are a few more, but this one I wanted to say as well, is solastalgia. So as defined, and of course I'm probably pronouncing all of these entirely incorrectly, so if anybody wants to correct me, please let me know.
And that would be a brave person, because I can't imagine how a lot of these words could be pronounced correctly.
All right. So solastalgia is defined by environmental philosopher Glenn Albright. Solastalgia is an emplaced or existential melancholia experienced with the negative transformation, desolation, of a loved home environment. So originally described in 2007 about the impact of an open-cut mining on the Hunter Valley landscape. So it's subsequently been picked up more broadly as a factor in responses to climate change. He also coined the term meteor anxiety, which refers to the anxiety triggered by abnormal or catastrophic weather conditions and a foreboding of future weather difficulties. So, yeah, they've got some resources and links, of course. So please go and have a look at www.austlit.edu.au, climate change. And there's a whole article, there's glossaries of books, there's some essays on the subject. So it's tracking Australian works that discuss climate change in all its forms, as well as informing the work. There's a bibliography data set, which is fantastic. So really, really worth having a bit of a look at. It's got children's fiction, YA, novels, all sorts of things there, and some brilliant photos. Yeah. Okay. So there's my little dive into that. So climate anxiety is changing the face of Australian fiction, and the language out there is forming around the need to express it.
Yeah. I mean, climate anxiety, I think, is probably the most succinct and clear way to describe, anything that's happening. From an abstract point of view, it kind of feels as though, because when you mentioned about the existential dread when it came to, the loss of an ecosystem or seeing the changes, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about, for example, the beautiful pine forest down in the valleys down here in the Fleurieu Peninsula that we enjoy every winter, and especially with all this rain that we're getting right now, it's going to turn into a fairy wonderland for more than one reason. So it's fantastic to walk through, but there is, you literally get lost in there like any good forest. Then last year we were walking along a familiar sort of hike through a section and reached a point where it kind of was quite confronting because you couldn't really see it at first or wasn't paying attention, where a whole section of the forest had been logged and it was just this desolate landscape. Now that was actually sustainable growth, a lot of that area, so that was planted for that purpose, but still there was that shock. And so the idea of climate anxiety, though, I think it's from a day-to-day perspective. Here I am sitting, I've got clothes, I'm in a beautiful, comfortable room, I'm talking on microphone, computers, electricity, all these comforts of modern living. The actual, what happens behind the curtain, so to speak, that drives all this technology, that drives our ability to turn lights on, that drives all the things that really we consider essential to a certain point, whether it is philosophically or not is another matter, but every day. We don't usually peek behind the curtain to see that, but the people that are, I guess, are responsible in a great part for the care of what goes into our atmosphere and stuff, they are always on that other side of the curtain. And so now it feels as though we've got this anxiety because suddenly we're forced to peek behind the curtain and then try and work out what's going on and what needs to be changed there. And the people running the show behind the curtains are now faced with people peeking on their side going, hey, I don't know if we like what you're doing. And it's a very tricky subject because but nobody's going to stop driving tomorrow. Nobody's going to stop turning the lights on tomorrow. So it's, but it's always going to be that shock. It's just like walking and finding half your path has disappeared to a desolate, barren landscape. I think realizing what really happens in order for our current standard of living and some of the mod cons, so to speak. So yeah, it's very tricky, but listening to Tanya speak and some of the themes she raised did give me so much food for thought. And obviously climate change is going to be such an important part in modern literature moving forward, as I think is virology and pandemics and that whole threat to the human race. But it made me have a bit of a look into and a bit of a think this morning over coffee and staring at the sky for a little bit while Bobby the cat checked on what chilies were still sprouting in this sudden snap weather. But in essence, when we talk about climate change, effectively we're talking on a fundamentally philosophical level about survival of the human race, because I mean, surely that's really what drives the whole argument. In the sense of, if we don't do something, then we may not be able to sustain ourselves as a living species on the planet. So yeah, definitely have a few thoughts, definitely looked into a few things. Look, it's not always it's not an uplifting subject in the sense of some of the hallways of thought that you do have to stroll down, but is there hope? I think there's definitely hope. And I think, our lovely science fiction can come in there because, as long as science fiction's alive, the concept of living in a far future is there, and somewhere in there is sprinklings of what may be needed, or at least kernels of imagination, garden growing capabilities to come up with the concepts and understand new physical laws that will get us there. But yeah, so there's definitely hope, but it's a serious conversation, absolutely. But look, without going into what Tanya says, because we're about to have a listen, but I think the beautiful thing is there is a sense of hope that she carries through in her approach to discussing what's such an important manner, also for such an important age group as far as demographic goes for her books. But yeah, I've got quite a bit to say. Did you want to have a chat now, or should we have a listen to Tanya?
Let's have a listen.
And then we'll jump down the little eco rabbit hole.
Okay.
Okay, well, without further ado, Veronica, would you like to introduce Tanya?
Absolutely. So we have one of our earliest authors to jump on the fabulous Australian Book Lovers website. So T.S. Simons, who is the author of, she has a series, the Antipodes series, Antipodes being the first novel, The Liminal Space, Ouroboros, and she's currently working on a fourth novel, Came. So let's have a listen to some of the inspiration behind her work. And welcome, Australian book lovers. I have with me today Tanya Simons. She is an Australian-based author of Scottish heritage. Now, Tanya lives in the Alpine region of Australia, and she believes the values of sustainability and community in a world where we place greater value on possessions than people. Her Antipodes series addresses the question, if we gave young people the opportunity to start over, would we replicate the mistakes of the past? Her desire to assist others saw her working in international development before realising that her passion lay in education. She holds a bachelor and master's degree from Monash University and enjoys travelling, mythology, snow skiing, and attempting to live as sustainably as possible. That is a great combination. What I do like is that she admits to being owned by two rather bossy standard schnauzers and two cats who co-manage her household. She has her first book, Antipodes, on the Australian Book Lovers platform, and all I can say after that is welcome, Tanya.
Thanks, Veronica. Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. Now I've just said Tanya instead of Tanya, and we've just admitted that, you know, the Scottish is a little bit different, so my apologies for that if I do that again. So, Tanya, I am coming to you today from Woiwurrung, Wurundjeri country. What country do you write on?
I'm on Yaithmatang country.
Beautiful, up in the Alpine region. It is lovely up there.
It is beautiful.
Yes. So I have to jump in straight away and say, what inspired you to write this book or the series?
Well,
I guess. Yeah.
I think like most authors, this was something that was percolating with me for a little while, and that idea that we've got our priorities a bit screwed up. And last summer for us was a particularly awful time when we had some fairly hideous bushfires. We were evacuated numerous times. You'd look out your window and you could see the environment burning. And I watched the young people in my community, and I was speaking to a friend who's a school principal, and we were talking about how young people struggle with their place in the world anyway. And they feel that they struggle with politics and climate change. And then, you know, you look out your window and suddenly, you know, the smoke is literally on your doorstep. So there was this overwhelming feeling of helplessness, but I couldn't help but wonder, if we gave young people the opportunity to start again, would they do things differently? And I think that was sort of combined with this idea that I was watching people buying these $10,000 handbags and shoes and just thinking, we've got our priorities really mucked up. I couldn't help but feel that in this environment, I was so proud of living here. Australians help out in a crisis. They put on food drives, and I was seeing hay being delivered to livestock and people offering up holiday homes and caravans. But once the crisis ended, everyone went back to their normal lives. And I really struggled with this idea. And of course, so this book actually was written primarily before COVID-19. But unfortunately, some of the themes have come through from COVID into a dystopian fiction book. But what I was really keen to write was not about the dystopia, how we got to where we got to in this book, but what would happen if we did start again, and would we be able to focus on sustainability and community and friendships and diversity of relationships and cultures and religions, and be tolerant of that rather than follow the mistakes, I think, of what our forefathers have.
Indeed. So, in fact, your book, as well as being dystopian, it fits nicely into the hope punk genre, which is gathering, quite a momentum. So I'm not sure if you've heard of that one before. So hope punk is that kind of movement that celebrates the pursuit of positive aims in the face of adversity. It was coined a couple of years ago, and it's been really interesting to watch that generate even, more of a following. So it sounds as though hopeful, despite everything that's going on, is where your work sits. Would that be right?
Absolutely, yes. That was very much where I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And while initially I saw this as a young adult type piece of work from sort of mid-teens up, what's been really interesting is that the feedback I'm getting from readers is that it's adults that are really enjoying it, and older adults, so the 40 to 60 bracket.
Right.
And whether it's that we want this better world for our own children, or whether we sort of feel a little bit responsible for where we are.
I was just going to mention that, yes, a little bit of responsibility and guilt in that, and having some hope is that perhaps the next generation will do better than we do.
Well, I think and as a parent myself, I do hope so.
Very good. So have your children read your book? Are your children old enough to have read your book?
Not quite. My boys are 9 and 13, so not quite old enough, but there was certainly an element of framing it from what sort of world do I want these boys to grow up in, and I want them to be connected to the community and not via Facebook and Instagram. I want them to actually have relationships with people and feel that they can put that priority on sustainability and looking after each other in a true community, which we have in a regional area, but not have to worry about, have I got the latest iPhone and the latest smartwatch? Is that really what's important?
Yeah. Yep. Good to hear. Good to hear. If a reader hasn't read your book, why do you think they should?
I think that's always a very difficult question. It's taken me a very long time as an author to realise that not every reader likes every book, and I certainly don't. I think the feedback I'm receiving is that it's, as we say, it's not, while it's technically dystopian, I really try to focus on the what ifs, the relationships, and that sense of community. So what happens when all of your stuff is taken away? So if you like to be challenged with something a little bit different, something a bit more intelligent, then this is for you.
Okay. That sounds good. Something a bit more intelligent. I like things with a little bit of challenge in them.
That's the feedback I'm getting.
Excellent, excellent. So I imagine that there would have been some research involved in your writing if you're dealing with, climate change and those kind of things in your work.
Quite a lot, and especially around the scientific concepts around antipodes and charging portals and those sorts of things. So and science is not my background, and I found that I did need to do quite a little bit of research around the scientific concepts so that they were accurate.
Okay. So when did you first admit that you were a writer?
The truth is, I don't think I still have. I still have that terrible imposter guilt on this one, and I'm just starting to get there now. The third novel in this series is coming out next month in March.
Fantastic! Congratulations!
Thank you. I'm just starting to accept the label now.
Very good. So I'm going to challenge you and ask you to please pronounce the name of your second book.
So the second book is called The Liminal Space.
Yes.
And a liminal space is that idea of the space between the major chapters of your life. So sometimes we do some of our living between the major chapters of our life, but we don't recognise it at the time.
Okay. How hard was it to write the second book in a series?
I was driving to work one day and living in a country area. That's a long drive. And I realised, I'd sent the first book off to the editor, and I realised I actually wasn't done with these people. And I wasn't done with this world that I was really emotionally invested in.
Right.
And so book 2, 3, and now 4 have flowed from there. And taken a slightly different path, but I realised that I was really invested in this and seeing this through. So there will be at least 4, possibly 5 in this series.
So the story might go on a little bit more. That's good to hear. I know as a speculative fiction reader, I love a good series. I often feel a bit cheated by standalone novels. It's not enough reading. But there you go. Tanya, tell me a little bit about the specific Australianness of your work. Is it based in Australia, despite it being dystopian?
Yes. So initially the characters are in Melbourne, and there's some references to Melbourne. There's obviously Scotland is the other love of mine. So there's some time in Scotland. And the second book has a whole section devoted to the northeast of Victoria, where I currently live.
Beautiful. Okay. Lovely part of the world. And where do you write? Are you working and writing part-time? What's the combination there?
I work full-time and write part-time, as well as parenting 2 children. So
where do you squeeze the time in then?
I get asked that an awful lot. I think where there's a passion, you always find a way.
Yes. Yeah. And so are you an early morning or a late evening writer, or a lunchtime?
I'm a late evening writer, which is quite strange for me because I'm a morning person, but evenings is when the kids are in bed and I can finally focus, and that's when I find it just flows. But I have an app on my phone for voice to text, and I'll find that I can be out walking or driving, and I feel the need to get an idea down, and that saves me.
Very good. What's the name of the app? Because some writers might be interested to hear that.
The free one I use is called Otter, OTTER, and it's fantastic because it emails the voice to text to yourself, and you've got it on your email, and you can just cut and paste it into Scrivener or whatever software you're using.
Okay, fantastic. And are you a pantser or a plotter?
I'm still struggling to admit that I am absolutely a pantser when it comes to writing, but in my real life I am super organised and I'm a lists person. I'm absolutely a plotter in real life, but in my writing I find that it just flows. When I do sit down in front of my computer, it just flows. So no, I would love to plan things out, but I just can't.
I'm impressed by people who have, spreadsheets and all of those beautiful things, and who know the end of the story before they get to it. So that's a good thing.
That's definitely not me. I've tried so hard to do the coloured sticky notes and everything else, but it's just not me.
No, well, fair enough. When you sit down to write, do you have anything that kind of starts the flow? Do you eat or drink anything? Do you have any music in the background? What's your process like?
No, look, I'm a really quiet worker, so I just like to sit and focus. Sparkling mineral water is about as good as it gets for me. No, look, it really is for me about just sitting, and I find that it just flows when I am in the right space. And if it's not, then I go back and edit something I've written previously.
Very good. Tell me, you mentioned a little bit before about your publisher. Who's your publisher?
So it's Ouroboros Books, and they're in Queensland.
Okay. What is their process? Are they traditionally published? Did you have to submit? Are they a hybrid where they help you with the publishing? How does it work?
It's more of an assisted hybrid process.
Okay. How did you find them?
Well, it was one of those things that I'd written books 1 and 2 and was working on 3 before I realised I should probably go and start looking for how I was going to publish this. And I approached a lot of traditional publishers, as I think most people do, and realised that it's a very difficult process, and a lot of it you are left to do the marketing yourself anyway.
Yes.
So I realised I actually wanted to continue to own my copyright and actually not have this world changed too much. So I found somebody who supported me in that process, and that was Ouroboros Books. And why I chose them was because the title of my third novel at that point is Ouroboros.
Yes.
And so I felt there was some serendipity there.
Very good. What does Ouroboros mean?
An Ouroboros is, and it appears in many ancient cultures, it's the idea of life, death, rebirth. And it's a snake or a dragon usually eating its own tail, and it's a circle or a ring. And the idea is that life is cyclic in nature. And so the third book is about coming full circle, and hence the title of the book.
Excellent. Now, there's another book in the series there somewhere.
So number 4 is called Cayenne, which is a Scottish Gaelic concept around a circle of protection or a sanctuary. So I'm conscious that I may be spelling that one out in the blurb a little bit about what a Kayem is.
Yes, very good, very good. Do you have any Scottish Gaelic language? Do you practice any? How close is your family to Scotland?
Very little, and most of it's not repeatable.
Fair enough. Yes, fair enough. We'll leave that one quietly aside. Okay. So what's your writing goals then for the next 12 months? If you've got a few things you're juggling there.
I am juggling quite a few things. So promoting obviously the first 3 books in the series, finishing number 4, getting that off to the editor. And as I say, I've got some ideas stewing in the back of my mind about number 5, about where I would like this to go.
Very good. Where have you found promoting to be successful?
I find marketing the hardest part of this entire process.
I think you're not alone there.
No, look, that was the part that I just did not expect. You put your heart and soul into this piece of writing, and then you've written it and you've polished it and been through developmental edits and line edits and things, and you finally get to a point where it's published, and then you think, okay, it's published, and then you realize, well, actually there's an awful lot of work out there, and there's some really amazing books out there. So how do you promote yours? I've just started with Facebook ads. I've got a website, Instagram, Facebook, all the usual social media.
Yeah.
So I must confess, I do not understand Twitter at all. And starting with obviously with family and friends, and then building reviews. So I think we're up to about 30-something reviews on Goodreads now, which is fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
And just trying to slowly build a market, but realizing that, it is quite a niche genre, and that there's a lot of books out there, and it takes time. There's no such thing as instant success.
No. There is rarely that instant overnight thing happening. So tell me, what's the best review that you've ever had? Or what are people saying, I guess, about your stories?
What I'm really loving is that I thought this was going to only really resonate with initially what was my target audience, young adult, new adult Australians. But what I've realised is that I'm getting some fantastic feedback from people older than that, so 30 plus, and overseas as well as in Australia. I did think the themes were perhaps Australian in nature, but it seems that a lot of people are concerned about climate change and the way our world works. And, I've had a lady who's in her 60s who said, she was a child of the 60s, and, she really, the themes really resonated with her. So I think that's, as an author, that's what you absolutely aspire to, is that somebody reads it and it resonates with them, and then they want to pick up the second book and say, look, where is she going to go with this?
It's excellent. Tell me a little bit now, we've done a little bit of the writing. Tell me a little bit more about, for readers, we're looking for some information. So who is your favourite character?
So this is a difficult one. So I initially wrote with a male protagonist in the first 2 books, Cam, and I wanted somebody who wasn't, the typical hero. So someone who has Asperger's syndrome and he has anxiety, but that's not the point of the book. And the fact that he overcomes his challenges, his personal issues, to actually succeed in this community. But as I wrote, I realised that I really love writing strong women. So books 3 and 4 are actually from a female perspective, and it's his partner's perspective. So I actually switched perspective in book 3 and try and write it from a female perspective, which I realised I enjoyed a lot more. So I do feel like I cheated on my main character. He's still there, but the perspective did change.
How easily did the world building come to you? This, it's obviously important in terms of your storyline. So how easy was that, or difficult?
The world building, look, it took me some time to really, and a lot of research and getting my head around some really key sustainability concepts around how would you do this? if there was a pandemic of these sort of proportions, and in these books, it's actually in water. Mm-hmm. So there's a protozoa in water, and it's about trying to protect themselves from that. So they live in this domed communities where they are protected from that. So it took some time to sort of work through, well, you know, how does air flow and all of those sorts of things when you set those things up. So a lot of scientific research around those concepts, and then how do you survive if you don't have wind? Well, you don't have obviously wind turbines. So how do you generate electricity and all of those kinds of things? So it was that idea of, we're not going back to the 17th century. You would want to set up a community with all the benefits of today, but how would you do that in a sustainable way? So without coal-fired power plants and those sorts of things, how would you do that? So it did take me quite some time to get there, but the subsequent books, while they're still set in that world, are more around character development.
Okay, so it's about the people. There's social science fiction in there as well. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah, those kind of things for me, you know, draw me in more than, I think, if the world is credible and if it is a part of the character of it, that's fine. But I really love to look at the relationships, the story arc. So tell me, are you happy with the way Cam and Freya, is that your Freya? With the way their story arc is going? It sounds like they've got a little bit to go.
They've got a long way to go. And but without giving away any spoilers.
Oh yeah, no spoilers.
It's just one, so those two characters continue all the way through. So that it is about their storyline and the challenges they face both together and apart.
Ah, very good. Do you feel mean sending challenges their way?
All the time, and every time I have to kill off a character, I feel terrible doing it. But you realise that without challenges, they can't grow, and it would also be really, really boring. So I do hate having to kill off somebody I'm quite attached to, but it does have to happen sometimes.
It does, to make it an interesting story and to see the growth, isn't it? Because for it to be relatable, people have to see how they work through that adversity. And it sounds like you've certainly given them a bucket load of that.
Well, yes, I do.
So your favourite book as a child, let's have a look at that. What did you love to read when you were little?
Look, I was an Enid Blyton girl. And I think it was because you could read these books and you could see what she was seeing. And, you know, the land of take what you please and the land of birthdays, and it was just so magical to me as a child to be able to climb up the tree and through the cloud. And I think I owned every Enid Blyton book, and I was devastated when I went off to university and my mum got rid of them all. I would have passed them on to my children. But no, I loved Enid Blyton. And then the same thing, even reading Harry Potter as an adult, you could see the dining hall with all the meals and you know, the floating candles and the ghosts. And it was just that wonderful descriptive nature of text that made you visualize it. And it's so much more powerful than a film medium.
Tell me, how much of your writing do you put into your because you're in education now, so how much of what you've learnt from writing yourself, do you think that's changed the way you deliver education?
I'm actually a CEO, so I don't work at a coalface level anymore. I think everything you learn, you use in different areas of your life. And I've recently been doing a lot of legal study for my work, and it does. You find little storylines and little arcs coming into your creative writing from your real world, and going the other way as well. I'll be doing some research about something, and then I'll say to colleagues, you know, have you thought about this?
Yes.
I think the world is a learning opportunity for us, and you pick and choose what you need at the time, and it comes to you what you need at the time, but it's not limited to that particular platform or that particular purpose.
That's good. Yeah. And I'd have to agree with you. You are the whole person. You are not just the writer or the worker or the mother. In fact, there's bits and pieces everywhere. Do you hold out hope for the world? given that you've written a particular dystopia, you're living through our existing world and have been involved in, some fairly difficult circumstances with the bushfires in particular last year. What hope do you have for the world at the moment?
I really do. And I think because at the end of it, I'm an optimist, and I realise that people will always overcome, and people, when they work together, will overcome. And so while I do find that in that teenage, angsty high school space, they are struggling to see past that, the rest of us, when you live through life, you see that there are peaks and troughs, and there's always going to be goods and bads. But when you've done enough living, you realise that there's always going to be good again. So even as we're going through COVID and we go through lockdowns and losing people, there will be good times again. We will overcome this, and I do genuinely believe that. And yes, there will likely be a happy ending to this series because I don't think I could write it any other way.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. You're writing in this particular genre. Do you think after this series there are more stories in you? And if so, in what kind of genre would you be writing?
I actually haven't thought that far. So I think, yes, absolutely. There's more stories in me. And I think writing is one of those skills that the more you do it, the better you get at it. So you actually get a lot better at focusing your thoughts and not going through quite so many drafts. But in terms of genre, I'm not sure. I can't see me ever writing in horror or romantic genres. So look, perhaps this is my space, or perhaps it's just that the young adult, new adult space is where I feel really comfortable.
Okay. Tanya, where can people find you online? You mentioned Instagram and Facebook. Have you got the website if you want to just share that with us?
I do have a website. So it's tssimons.com, and Simons is Simons.
Excellent. Tanya, can I ask you about the decision to have your initials rather than your name? Was there any conscious thoughts behind that one?
Well, at the time I was, because I was writing with a male protagonist, I was concerned that men wouldn't want to particularly read a book written by a woman who was writing in a male perspective. So I was a little concerned about that. And so it was a little bit of a throw to J.K. Rowling and other people like that. But what, of course, has subsequently happened with marketing is that it's become quite apparent that I am female. So it was also, strangely enough, around the marketing. It was about what domains you could get. So what handles you could get on Twitter and Instagram, and what websites were available. So that's why I went that way.
That's lovely. So, Tanya, any final words for potential writers?
Oh, look, I think I heard a wonderful quote once, is that you can always edit a poorly written page, but you can't edit a blank page. So you've just got to start somewhere. Just write it, and then you can always go back and edit it, but you have to start.
That is a very, very good advice indeed. All right. So, Tanya, that's all we have time for today. And thank you so much for giving us your time from the alpine areas of the country, which is fantastic. And what I'm going to ask is that people have a look at your book on the Australian Book Lovers website. Check out Tanya's social media pages and follow the next book in the series, tell me what the final book's coming out. What's coming out next? The third one.
The Liminal Space is out now.
Yes.
And book 3, Ouroboros, is out in March.
Thank you, because they are on my to-be-read pile. As soon as I saw that, I thought, oh, yes, that's good. Unfortunately, I've now got a to-be-read pile that is about, 3 spreadsheets long, but we'll leave it at that. All right, Tanya, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will go back to the main podcast. So there you have it. We have a fabulous interview with Tanya Simons.
Yeah, wow.
And yeah, really good. Not only that, but you also can get all 3 or the first 3 of her, what do you call 4 books? A quaternary? There's a trilogy and then a quadrology, maybe.
I'd call it a box set, but that's
a box.
Cheap's way out.
Okay. Anyway, Tanya's first 3 books, writing as T.S. Simons, are all available on the Australian Book Lovers website now. So she has her book published, which is fantastic.
Yes, a great opportunity to jump on, have a look and have a read. And
so she's working on K number 4 at the moment, which is really good.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. And look, there's just one other thing before we dive down that rabbit hole that I wanted to mention, and it's one that I've put on my to-be-read pile. There's a book put out by Diversity Arts Australia, and they are a group led by culturally and linguistically diverse artists and cultural workers. And they've got a book out which came out about 12 months ago called After Australia. So after empire, after colony, after white supremacy, 12 diverse writers imagine an alternative Australia. So it's kind of that future-looking. Climate catastrophe is in there as well as other things. So it's something that I've now put on my website. It's from one of our small presses, which is a firm press. They put out some great work as well. Available at readings, one of our small bookshops, etc. So have a bit of a look at that. And it's got a dozen. Did I say a dozen? 13.
Yeah. Oh, it's 13, is it?
12. No, I'm thinking baker's dozen because we're in episode 13.
That's right.
But no. So yes, there's 12 fabulous stories, short stories from the future. So fantastic.
That sounds
have a
good.
look at that. Speculative fiction as advocacy for decolonisation in Australia. And we've talked about that before. So I have to try and see if we can get some people on who know a lot more about it than me. Okay. Climate change. Go, Darren. Which rabbit hole did you go down prompted by Tanya's interview?
Yeah, well, I think I hinted at it before she gave such a beautiful interview, and that was the idea that climate change, effectively the conversation has its roots in what is essentially survival of our race. And, I try and I love thinking from very big and very small. So, for example, I wonder, that we think we should live more sustainable and for example, grow our own food and generate our own power. Sometimes I try and have thought experiments and think, okay, how long does that work as far as from a feel-good idea of living? So, for example, we've got a bit of a property out the bush which is completely sustainable. So it's rainwater only, solar power, battery storage. So there's no footprint, I suppose, besides obviously the manufacture for some of the goods that are on there. Now, we could probably grow our vegetables and grab some fish from the river. Mm-hmm. But, for example, if something were to happen, bushfire or let's just say a natural disaster or something that wasn't, to blame through climate change or anything, but something devastating, disease even, and suddenly 50 families had to find shelter, or we had to offer shelter to, say, 50 families on that same block, then suddenly that way of sustaining life is not going to be practical. And hard decisions will have to be made. For example, power is going to be needed. Come winter, we're going to have to keep 50 families warm. So essentially, do we chop down the wood? And how long does that last before we've got no trees on the property? Do you know what I mean? It seems it gets this compounding problem of numbers. And that led me to think, well, as human beings, are we outside of the web of life in the sense of when we think about ancient tribal living, and obviously we have some tribes still today that are part of the ecosystem, but as soon as you increase numbers, it's almost like there's a threshold where the disconnect from the web of life happens, and we become a hindrance to the life. Do we survive? I mean, current population I see is about 7.9 billion. Now, the theory is if all 7 billion or all 7 plus billion of us right now were to begin to enjoy, say, a European standard of living, which is just defined as approximately 60% of the consumption of the average American, the Earth could at the moment sustainably support about 2 to 3 billion people. So that's some serious math problems. So the question then is, which was raised by Tanya in her explorations through her novels and continuing to be explored, is if given the chance to do it again, will a sustainable lifestyle lead to, if we try to, try something different, but will any sustainable lifestyle eventually lead to new and similarly damaging problems based purely on the size of a population? And that's where I started to think, well, terraforming other planets is an option, but I think as far as our current science and mathematical predictions are at this point, which of course could change, we're talking millions a year process before that would even be feasible. So, essentially what do we have to do then? We're going to have to come together as a race, and that is what terrifies me, because I don't know. I was thinking, well, let's see how we can put some. I was trying to just brainstorm in my head, thinking, how do we come together as a race? And so when it comes to number problems, can we learn from different relationships between numbers? So, for example, we currently have in Australia, I think the number thrown around is about 53,000 considered illegal, immigrants, which are essentially the majority of which have expired visas. So that's quite a high number. Obviously, it's not for me to say whether, the politics might add all that. I'm just talking about a physical number. Now, each year, for example, in the US, they have approximately 500,000 entries each year. Our 53,000 is our current total. There's two very big, very different approaches to, say, a situation based on numbers. Now, the irony is, you think, okay, well, let's see what we're doing. I think we just spent $50 million, haven't we, on one family at the moment, keep them on an island?
Oh, I don't know the number specifically, but a lot of
approximately
money.
$50 million spent. So, that I think highlights an issue straight away where we've got nothing in place to prepare for a profound increase in numbers. And a profound increase in numbers is really the root cause or the root issue of, I think, climate change. It can't be anything but. So, I think what's going to be needed for us to become part of a eco-solar system or solar ecosystem, which is really what's going to need to be done. Otherwise, I'm not too sure. The only way we're going to be able to do that is come together. So I think that's that's where I think hope can be found within the climate change. The fact that it's now becoming such a powerful discussion, hopefully within that discussion, the sense of and desire of hope for us as a race to, continue on indefinitely in the future and possibly find new ways, sustainable ways to keep our planet going, and then take those beautiful discoveries and bring life to other planets would be would be such a beautiful testament to then having a reason to have human beings exist. Because at the moment we're actually essentially bringing an end to life as opposed to bringing a life anywhere. So I don't know, terraforming, science fiction. I think science is only going to get us so far, and politics may be a hindrance. So, I think the thoughts today that I found myself traveling down were that, I think if we can't truly come together as a species, then we're going to die as a species. And if that's the case, then we've failed, we will have failed, regardless of personal beliefs. We would have failed what is possibly the easiest philosophical, spiritual, intellectual, religious test of all. And that is to just look out at the stars, recognize an almost infinite vastness of space, and know that our glittering, water-soaked planet is the greatest gift that can ever be imagined. Do we look after it, or do we don't? So as not cosmic dread, but as existential eco-anxiety as there is, and that I experience when sometimes, I think there's a huge hope. I think eventually people will start looking out into the universe and will hopefully find reasons to come together, because that's our only option. The science won't get us there. Science is also behind nuclear weapons. Science is merely a set of laws. It has nothing to do with determination, motivation, inspiration, and our willingness to, how we'd like to impact time itself moving. Yeah.
Very good thoughts. Very good thoughts. And takes me nicely, segues into one of my quotes for the day.
Oh, yes.
So this is from, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, was there a particular theme you chose for your quotes this week?
Well, it kind of fitted a little bit into what Tanya was talking about. So I'll give you this one and you can see where it fits. This is from Ray Bradbury. And what, you ask, does writing teach us? First and foremost, it reminds us that we are alive and that it is a gift and a privilege, not a right.
Yes, absolutely. A gift and a privilege, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's really from what you were just saying towards the end of your contemplation there.
Yeah, my rabbit hole for
no, your contemplation.
Train ride.
I mean, we are alive. It is a gift and a privilege. It's not a right. Do something about it in your own life or in your own space, in your own community. So, yeah, Ray Bradbury. Second quote, have you got one for us?
Oh, yeah, I do actually. Yes, I've got one here by Vivienne Westwood. Now, this is, I guess, a little bit similar to yours in the sense that has a little bit of hope, but it's you've got to invest in the world. You've got to read. You've got to go to art galleries. You've got to find out the names of plants. You've got to start to love the world and know about the whole genius of the human race. We're amazing people.
Very good.
Yeah. So,
because she was the fashion designer, wasn't she, Vivienne West? So that sounds...
Oh, I couldn't tell you. I didn't do my research that thoroughly.
Oh,
I was just captivated by the quote.
The quote is good, but yes.
But similar to what you just mentioned, like, the reading illuminates a profound idea of the fact that, it's not a right, it's a gift in one sense. And if we invest in the world around us, if we learn to love and understand what's around us, then, we're only going to want to care for it, aren't we?
Yes.
And I mean, just take I think we've had a laugh before about, please don't judge me on my behaviour in peak hour traffic. But that can be, everyday life as well, can't it?
So absolutely.
I've got to try and love more cars.
All right. I'm going to give you my second quote, which, again, was the link to sitting quietly with the words that, Tanya was talking about. So the role of a writer is not to say what we can all say, but what we are unable to say. So that's from Anais Nin, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. So she was a French-Cuban-American diarist and novelist, and she wrote lots of short stories and erotica. So she has some good quotes out there. So, that it reminds me I really should read some more of her diaries. But, yeah, the role of a writer is not to say what we can all say, but what we are unable to say. So in climate fiction, I suspect that there is some fairly confronting and uncomfortable truths that novelists are putting out there.
Yeah, such a beautiful quote, and it's also a good license, isn't it? Because, as you said, there's some really difficult conversations to be had moving forward, and look, no one's got any answers right now, of course, because that's the whole reason we're having a discussion. But to go into those really uncomfortable areas, sometimes writing is a fantastic way to do it, because you can have a protagonist to venture into these realms, and it allows people to sort of step into somebody else's shoes and maybe go somewhere they wouldn't normally go in, say, face-to-face conversation, or that they can find a voice and questions that maybe one wouldn't normally bring up just over a barbecue and a beer. I think that's a beautiful one. Absolutely.
Good. All right. Give us your number 2.
Okay, so I'm going to try and, I got a little bit existential there, but I 100% have hope that we're going to rise from the ashes of whatever this current situation is. So a little bit of a hope in this quote. This is by Jules Verne, and in spite of the opinions of certain narrow-minded people who would shut up the human race upon this globe, as within some magic circle it must never outstep, we shall one day travel to the moon, the planets, and the stars with the same facility, rapidity, and certainty as we now make the voyage from Liverpool to New York.
There you go.
Yeah.
And he was on the money. We've been to the moon. We've got stuff happening out there. We've got shuttles and things, what is it, Virgin Galaxy? Virgin?
Galactica.
Galactica?
Oh, no, I'm thinking Battlestar Galactica. Galactica, I think.
Anyway, we are getting closer. So, yes, it will come. And look, I've read too much science fiction not to believe that it won't come.
Well, what do you believe? What's your sort of gut feeling? Do you think if you had to fast forward mentally, say, 1,000 years in time, is it going to be survival based purely on our ability to escape from this planet? I.e., is it going to be colonies in space and those left behind are left behind? Or do you think we'll turn things around?
That's a toughie. I am a believer I'm an optimist, so I'm a bit of a hope punk believer. So I think we can turn it around. That'd probably come back to haunt me, but I think that there is power in the groundswell of social groups now, in the groundswell of small groups making a change in their own lives, in their own communities, and that gradual momentum that will push some of those ridiculous political barriers to the side. So, yeah, I hope that before we totally trash the earth, I think that we will be able to do something about it, and we will get off this planet at the same time.
Yeah. Look, I think there's nothing. Well, no, there is things to stop us, but as far as the science technology is there, we can, we can, to the best of our ability, and based on obviously population size, we can still do some wondrous things to reverse the damage we've done, and we can create, new technologies. Will only breed new technologies, and there are things coming that we can't even begin to imagine. I mean, any more than someone on a horse back in 1860 was thinking about, hey Google, turn on my lights, can you do Netflix, etc. So there's things we can never imagine. But the irony is there's one thing in the way, and that's us.
Yes.
Us and the other thing is war, of course. And it cracks me up. It was very strange. I was trying to look up what is the official number of COVID deaths in Australia 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it to yourself and listeners to type in that question on Google and see how hard it is to actually get the answer. Mm-hmm. It's very odd, but I'm no conspiracy theorist, because I think we've had two, maybe. I'm talking 11th of May, around there. Let's say under 5 so far, which is very good for the country and very lucky. And,
COVID deaths? We've had more than that.
No, it's in 2021.
Oh, and this is just this year. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it gets a little bit trickier to narrow it down, because they keep you'll have 2 pages constantly reminding you of the total cases.
Yes.
So which is a little bit of a scare tactic. I don't know. But the thing is, we are shutting cities down still for, I guess this is a bit of a political thing to say, but also it's a reflection on where we're putting our love. So, we're shutting cities down based on the theory that we don't want to have this virus spread through our community, which we don't, because we don't want people to suffer, and most of all, we don't want people to die. Now, going to war with China, how many people do you think that's going to put lives at risk? And I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but it's just such a schizophrenic thought process out there. So hopefully the generations below us will come through and start bringing the entire focus to, turning our jewel back into a dazzling jewel of this little solar system. Because climate change may be the last of our worries. You just never know until we can sort ourselves out as our relationships out on a global scale. But I'm with you. I think it's going to be, I think, we're going to, once we can get out of space, maybe that'll completely transform our understanding of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do not believe that we are alone. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. So that's for another day, because I think we've chatted long enough today.
Okay.
And thank you to our listeners for hanging in there till the end of the podcast. There is more excellent content to come after we sign off. How about that?
the entertainment will continue. Assuming, I'm not sure if you can talk about, say what we've just been talking about. It's entertaining. I know it's probably a bit heavy.
Thought-provoking, Darren. Thought-provoking.
Yes. But there's some great entertainment coming.
Indeed. Yeah. So if you would like to get a link to Tanya's books, as well as following her on social media and going to her website, you can find her on AustralianBookLovers.com. And you can also find Australian Book Lovers on Twitter at Australian Books, Facebook and Instagram at Australian Book Lovers. If you're a reader and you'd like to receive our semi-regular newsletter, which is filled with lots of excellent Aussie authored books and giveaways and news and updates, jump on the website and hit the subscribe button, which are on all by the homepage. I think we've got those, but there will be a pop-up. I think we've got a pop-up now, haven't we, on the homepage, which is good.
Absolutely. If you haven't had the opportunity yet to subscribe and you're looking to subscribe,
go back and have a look.
By all means.
For authors, you can go straight to the AustralianBookLovers.com/for authors and pop your book details in there, and we'll put you up on a page. And as Darren has said, keep your eye out for the short stories coming up very soon. So all that remains, Darren, is for you and I.
Yes.
To take care for now. and remember to read more Aussie books. Hooray.
That was pretty good. We didn't even do a count in. So that was.
No, I thought I'd spring it on you and see how you went.
That's 9.28 easy. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we look forward to sharing some time with you on our very next episode.
Okay, bye for now.
Take care, everybody.
Hi there, this is Laurie Bell. Today I'd like to read to you a small section of my novel The Good, the Bad and the Undecided, which is a collection of 12 short stories set during the thrilling events of Whitefire, a Tony Dell adventure. Location: The Unspoken Lands. "This is all your fault," Steve hissed the accusation at his older brother as they were pushed, along the endless grey corridor towards Galleon's office. Their usual contact was Stelmith, Galleon's right-hand man. That the boss himself wanted to see them could only be bad. The oppressive heat from outside had followed them in, and sweat dripped down the centre of Steve's back. This argument had been going on for a while. Kel just didn't grasp how serious the situation was. Galleon did not summon you to his office on a whim. "Steve, we're his go-to guys. Our shipping routes, my shipping routes. Yeah, well, your shipping routes are the best, and so are our teams. Even with our low costs, we get the job done. He'll be fine. We just have to explain it was a one-off." Steve stopped walking, not even trying to keep the incredulous expression off his face, stunned by his brother's lack of foresight. The gill behind them hit Steve in the back hard. He jolted forward, glaring at the guard over his shoulder. The beast-like snout didn't hide the sharp-looking fangs projecting from his fat lips. Bloodthirsty and violent, it was not surprising Galleon had Gil guarding his apartment. "I was on a winning streak, okay? Look, Galleon's cool, he'll understand." Steve wanted to clip his brother over the ear to make him see sense. He didn't. Kel would punch the shengi out of him. And then there was the Gil behind him. Now was not the time to be physically aggressive. He worried it would only encourage the Gil to violence. "He won't understand. You put the whole project behind schedule. I can't protect you this time, Kel. You can't be so stupid that you don't see that. I don't need you to save me. You don't know what you need." Steve grumbled loud enough for his brother to hear him. Kel frowned. "You worry too much." The Gil shuffled closer and sniffed at Steve's sweat-soaked collar. Steve squirmed at the touch of the sticky tongue licking the moisture off his neck. He twitched away and fell against his brother's weedy body, staring back at the Gil, mesmerised by the saliva hanging from its fangs. "People that call Gil ugly have never seen one up close," Kel muttered. Steve spied the sweat beading at the white skin of Kel's receding hairline. It exposed his true feelings. So he was worried. "Yeah, this is not going to end well for either of us." Steve ran his fingers through his own damp hair. The Gil sniffed at the stink rising from Steve's underarm, the sound turning Steve's stomach. "Move." Meaty hands encouraged Kel forward. There was a loud crunch and Kel groaned. Steve shuffled forward before he received the same motivation. "You all right?" "Never better." The Gil grinned, slack skin pulling back to expose his sharp teeth, like a picture straight out of a childhood horror story. He chuckled. At least Steve assumed it was a chuckle. The sound that emerged reminded Steve of his lightship's generator. He shot a look at his brother. The smirk dancing at Kel's lips said he'd made the same connection. A rare moment of camaraderie between the siblings. Delay over, their procession continued down the austere corridor until they were stopped by a sealed door. A beam of light sprang forth from a port in the doorframe, scanning them for weapons, before the door, as thick as the Gil's arm, swung inward. It seemed that Galleon did not welcome uninvited guests. Steve swallowed his fear and stumbled into the sharply lit room.
The Emporium of Imagination by Tabitha Bird. Luminous and lyrical, this book was a treat to read from beginning to end. Bird has entranced again with her subtly magical world and created a shop we would all love to visit. The Emporium of Imagination has a beautiful way to deal with grief and offers wonderful alternatives to lives spent with regret and recrimination, shame and anger. The rural Australian town of Boonah is a character all on its own and ably supports Erlitich, Enoch, Anne, and all the other citizens as their lives ebb and flow around the Emporium. There's also a great story for the characters to inhabit and lessons for us all to consider. A great read.
Let's meet again when magic happens.
Australian Book Lovers acknowledges First Nations peoples and recognises their continuous connection to country, community and to culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and honour the sharing of traditional stories passed down through generations. We're committed to a safe and inclusive welcome for authors and readers of all cultures and backgrounds, including people of LGBTQIA+ communities and their families.